So welcome to Building a Pipeline, the case for hiring junior developers in the IRL track, or as the millennials say, in real life, as we talk about the ins and outs of junior development and why it's important. So as Humpty Hump said, I'll tell you a little bit about myself, then I'll tell you a little bit about this dance. So I live in Raleigh, North Carolina in the United States. If you couldn't tell from the accent, I am not British. I apologize for Trump. I can't say anything else. For me, I am currently the product manager of team sports products at NBC Sports Engine, where we make all sorts of cool things for youth and adult amateur sports teams. Previously, I worked at places like Rackspace. I was also in the sports industry at a company called TeamSnap. My background is I started off the first half of my career in sysadmins, or as they call it today, the DevOps. I then moved into more of a Rails development position, and then moved into more of a hiring manager, CTO-esque role. This is actually the first job I've ever had without a direct technical component, so that's new for me. I've been hiring developers for about 10 years or so, which is kind of where the genesis of this talk came from, a lot of the stuff that I've seen as a hiring manager. And in the interest of full disclosure, because we're talking about junior developers and the subject will come up later, hashtag spoiler alert, I am on the employer advisory board for a code school in North Carolina called the Iron Yard. On the employer advisory board, I help them figure out what sort of skills they need to be teaching people from the perspective of a hiring manager. So if you think that invalidates everything else in my talk, feel free. I'm also getting over a cold, so if I snort loudly into your ear, I sincerely apologize, but mucus is what it is. Case in point. So, I'm not sure if many of you knew this. Actually, let's before we get into this, as you've already read it, let me take a quick survey by a show of hands. How many people would consider yourself kind of juniors in your field right now? Okay, excellent. How many people at one point in your career or another were probably a junior level person? That should be everyone else. How many people never answer questions involving raising your hands? It's called a paradox, and you just broke the universe. Nice job, pal. So for those of you who are junior, or those of you who were junior at one point in time, or those of you who happen to start your careers at a senior level, good for you. This talk will be relevant. So I'm not sure how many of you in the technology field knew this, but it's expensive to hire developers. Did anyone know that? I knew that because I hired developers. Awesome. How many people here would consider yourself hiring managers? Okay, cool. Y'all know that this isn't TV and I can see you, right? Okay, just checking. So as a hiring manager, developers are really expensive. I did some research in the summer of this year. Glassdoor.com was saying that a senior software developer on average in the United States, which is the entirety of the known universe as far as I'm concerned, made about $120,000. That seems low to me. I don't know exactly the methodology they had. In Raleigh, North Carolina, which is a tech hub, but not the tech hub of the United States, senior software developers are making, on average, about 120 to 150,000 pounds, which, thanks to the Brexit, equals 120 to 150,000 pounds, pounds. I messed up that joke, but you got where I was going for. So out in Silicon Valley, where it's real crazy, the salaries are almost certainly higher than that. So this is kind of the low end of the spectrum as far as kind of the world that I live in, but it's still up there. I grew up the child of a school teacher and a tractor salesman. They probably didn't make $120,000 in a decade. So we're making $120,000 or more now. That's a lot of money. For the average startup, the vast majority of your spend is, especially in this modern cloud world, on developers, not technology. So they're really expensive. Also, I don't know how many of you in the industry know this, but recruiting is really hard right now. If you're trying to get developers into your company, you're going to people normally who are employed already. They're getting calls from recruiters on a daily, if not hourly basis. And you or your recruiters, bless their hearts, have to get above the noise and try to get people interested in your job because your customers or investors have said, we want you to build stuff. And it's kind of hard to build stuff without people building the stuff. So you have to go find the people to build the stuff, and the people who build the stuff are already building the other stuff. And thus we get into an arms race there. Plus, with the growing acceptance of remote work, you can't just find people and say you're going to drive through traffic and come into an office every day. Now they're getting offers from companies say, yeah, you can work at home, pants optional. We don't care. Just get the coding done. So now that's another challenge you have to face. Even if you are working remote, you're competing against other people who are working remote. And the industry as a whole is still accelerating to the point where there are more open jobs for developers than there are people to fill them. North Carolina's chief among them with lots of technology growth. So you have to be able to fill those jobs. If you're filling those jobs by trying to poach people out of other companies, you have to be able to pay them more than they're making now or give them something that's more compelling than they have now. And that's pretty tough these days. But one thing that I noticed as a hiring manager working in the hiring manager community in Raleigh was that my peers in the industry would have these open job postings. They would be having a very hard time filling them. And I would say, oh, that's really tough. Hey, I know this woman, she just got out of a code school. She's just starting her career. She's been coding on the side, as a technical writer. She wants to make a switch. Why don't you hire her? And they're, oh, whoa, slow down, cowboy, because we're all cowboys in the U.S. Slow down. We only hire senior developers. We don't hire junior developers. Has anyone else heard that at all? Good. Okay. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be in this talk, and thus the selection bias is in play. So it became a common enough occurrence for me to hear this that I had delved further, and I heard some fairly consistent arguments against why they would only choose to hire senior developers and nothing below. And my view of the world, shockingly enough, is that that's not the right way to approach the problem. So if your company is like this, if you're around technology communities that are like this, I'm going to list out some of the reasons that I've heard, and then I will explain to you why I don't think those are really good reasons. So these are the arguments I most commonly hear from technology companies about why they don't hire junior developers. I get this one a lot, especially because I tend to roll in the startup community. That's kind of the community that I'm most heavily involved in. We're too small. Our company is way too small. We've got this core, tight-knit group of developers. We're still looking to raise that first big round so that we can accelerate. Everyone does everything. We're too small for a junior developer to come in and be able to contribute. And I think that's true up to a certain point. There definitely are companies and teams that are too small and too early to bring in someone who's brand new to coding as a full-time job. My counter-argument is I think that point is smaller than they think it is. Having looked at a lot of engineering teams, and again, I tend to work in the startup community, so I see kind of small to emerging companies more frequently than others. My rule of thumb is that if you've got a development team of 4 or more people, you're big enough at that point to be able to absorb a junior developer. So if you're 3 or fewer, feel free to use that excuse. We're too small. If you're 4 or more, I put forth the argument that you've got enough going on that you will be able to take that person on and give them interesting things to do. Plus, if you go back to that early slide, developers are super expensive. If you're small, you're probably at a point where you haven't either found enough customers to really kind of pay the bills, or you're trying to get to that funding round that allows you to accelerate faster. If you have limited money to spend, junior developers are a lot cheaper than senior developers by a factor of generally a third. So if you're using this excuse, we're too small, you're probably also telling me that finances are a concern, but then you're also telling me that you're only going to hire developers that are going to make $150,000 a year. Math doesn't work for me. Another excuse I hear quite often is that companies don't have time to babysit junior developers. hey, you should take a look. We're so busy. We got so much going on. We just don't have that time to put into bringing someone on board. Basically, they're saying their onboarding process is awful. That's what they're saying. If you say we don't have time to babysit a junior developer, we're like, we don't know how to onboard people. Fair enough. I'm not judging. But that's what you're saying. Onboarding any new developer into your development team takes time. If you have onboarded a senior level developer and they're super productive the first week, they're probably either a subject matter expert or they are abnormal in some way. I have been a senior developer going into new companies. I know the tech stack, I know the tooling. It still takes me weeks to actually get into the flow, understand a new company's process, all the little quirks that make them unique, figure out where all the skeletons are, all that sort of stuff. And that's me with 20 years of doing this. If your expectation is we can't hire a junior developer because it's going to take him a few weeks, I think your priorities are messed up because it's going to take anyone that you bring on time to get up. So please don't use that excuse. Second, if you're bringing on junior developers and you have a fairly experienced group, it's an opportunity for them to refine their thinking. So how many people have used the I'm explaining my technology problem to a stuffed animal method? If not, you should. It's super fun and they're squishy and adorable. But in my case, I quite often explain the problems to my wife, who got her degrees in theater and journalism and is thus unfortunately completely unemployable, but she's not really a technology person. So there have been many times she's come up and said, you seem to be pacing the floors. What's wrong? I've got this problem. What's the problem? Well, I'm trying to figure out how to make this, talk to this, and it's just not working. I've tried everything I know how to do, and the two things aren't, hang on, I'm going to go code. I got the answer. Like, that flash of inspiration is a real thing. So if you're the type who just talks out loud to try to solve a problem, if you're doing that with your new developers, guess what? Two people will benefit. You will probably think through your problem more clearly. They will gain context and understanding that makes them a better developer. So don't think of it as babysitting. Think of it as the stuffed animal problem where the stuffed animal will actually be able to contribute. If you hire junior developers who are eager to work, who understand your product, then you're not babysitting. You're focusing. They want to come in and help. They want to be a developer. If you're standing in their way, you're doing it wrong. If you're giving them opportunities to take those first steps, like we all did, be it in our college dorm room, be it on that first computer our parents had, be it in a job where it wasn't what you were doing full time, but you were taking those first steps. You were trying to solve a problem. If you had the opportunity to focus on that problem, you got better. And I'm not making sweeping generalizations here, but having been in enough dev shops, nobody is working on code full time. Check the internet logs. They're not. I know we all talk about being overworked. I know we all talk about how dedicated we are. Slither.io would not be a thing if this was the case. Take the time that you're not coding and you're goofing off on Facebook or TechCrunch or whatever your online drug of choice is, and use that to talk to somebody else. I know humans are scary. It's weird. But do that, and then your junior developer onboarding becomes much easier. This is one that I got, shockingly enough, from a former coworker. And I'd sent him on a couple of new junior developers who had graduated from code schools. They were did not have a degree in computer science. Found their work very interesting. I did. And I sent them on. I was like, you should look at these people. I'm like, I don't hire code school graduates. All right. Explain further. Well, code school graduates, they're not in technology for the right reasons. Okay. What do you mean by that? Well, they went to code school just so they could get into the job and make a lot of money. How much do you make? Newsflash, we're kind of all in it for the money to some extent. I don't know any developers personally, not saying there aren't any out there, even to the extent of like people in public service, Code for America fellows, who got into this job to be super poor. My other career choice coming out of college was to get into newspapers. Newspapers, for those of you who don't know, were like the internet on paper. No, I'm kidding. It's an older crowd. That joke works better with the millennials. But I looked at the two possible career options, and I was like, one of those will allow me to eat steak on occasion, one of them will not. So don't give me they're in it for the money when salaries are going like this. That's not a tag you can hang on code school graduates. So the quality of the code school varies. I've seen good ones and I've seen bad ones. I'll leave it to your imagination to decide what I think about the one I've been associated with for several years, but you can't discount the fact that these people are dropping $15,000, $20,000 of their money on a dream to be able to do this job. They're putting their money where their mouth is. They're taking a far more courageous choice than I could ever possibly take. I couldn't do that. No way. I couldn't drop that much money on a dream. They are. They might be qualified, they might not be qualified. That'll prove out over time on an individual level. But don't give me they're not in it for the right reasons when they're making a bet that you wouldn't make, Mr. Hiring Manager. Plus, and this is something that I value very highly, developers who get into the business and they've had a previous life before becoming a developer tend to have amazing perspective on the real world. I personally, as a hiring manager, as a team builder, see technology as the means and not the end. I know there are a lot of folks out there who are in the technology for technology's sake. Perhaps if you're building libraries and kind of low-level stuff, that's good. But for the vast majority of technology companies, the technology is just the vehicle that gets you to solving a problem in the real world. If you're myopically focused on the delivery mechanism, I put forth that you are highly unlikely to build compelling product. And at the end of the day, your customers, your investors, whoever, that's what they care about. They don't really care if you chose Ruby over Python. They could not care less. They care about whether you're making the world a better place. And if you've got the people who are making all of those little decisions every day about how to implement a particular feature, what technology choice to use, et cetera, and they're colored that with their own lives and their experience in the real world, and you have people who have gotten their head out of the tech bubble, you will build better product. When I built my team at a company that I worked at in the ad space, building ads for real estate agents in their giant hair, and they do all have giant hair, and I'm very jealous of that fact. I hired 3 code school graduates. One of them had been an investment banker in his past life. One of them was in academia. She was in English Renaissance literature. And the other had run a consignment shop. She was a small business owner. Real estate agents are independent small business owners. I have someone on my team who can think like that. Real estate agents communicate with their clients across a broad spectrum of mediums. I have someone who understands the English language incredibly well. Real estate agents thrive on data. They want more data to make better purchasing decisions. We have a data analyst from an investment bank. My engineering team is going to make better decisions. So this one is could probably be boiled down into the you're fooling yourself category. Our work is too hard. We can't hire junior developers because the stuff we do is so complex. It's so cutting edge. No one without years of experience could possibly understand what we do. It's too hard. Our work is so hard. And yeah, there are companies out there doing legitimately groundbreaking technology work that is so steeped in kind of particular branches of science that you have to, before you can even begin to wrap your head around the code or the problem, you have to have a doctorate degree in bioinformatics or statistics or something. That work is out there. That's probably not what you're doing. There's much, much, much more work by companies in the technology space that's taking stuff out of a database, putting it on a screen somewhere, sticking it back in a database. That's what my company does. It's interesting work. It can be complex in parts, but at the end of the day, pulling the stuff out of a database, showing it to somebody, sticking it back in. So if you're going to give me the "our work is too hard" excuse, I want you to do a lot of soul searching and tell me, are you really pushing the boundaries of computing, or do you have a database app? Because if you have a database app, bless your heart, I'm sure it's nice and all, it's not that complex. So this is kind of when I hear this excuse from people, I'm like, all right, so what do you do? What is so complex? And it quite often boils down to, we've got a proprietary technology that shows stuff in a database. In any technology organization over a few people, not all the work you do on a day-to-day basis is senior developer work. Experienced developers are expensive. You don't have a lot of time unless you're in a very established company. Get your senior developers to spend their time on the work that they are uniquely qualified to do and brings value. That's why you hired them. And at the end of the day, there's always the basic blocking and tackling work of keeping a technology product online that somebody's got to do. And if you have a team full of senior developers, you're going to have someone drawing the short straw every week. It's like, all right, it's your turn in the bug bucket. Right? So we've all been there. That doesn't make anyone happy. They're doing work that's kind of below their pay grade. You're not getting the benefit of having the senior developer using their talents fully. And you're missing an opportunity for someone for whom that work is new and exciting and different and what they want to be doing. We all started out in a world where everything we did was brand new. We all compiled code for the first time. We all wrote that Hello World website. At one point, it was all new and exciting to us, and we may not be able to think back that far and remember just how exciting it was to be able to say, I wrote code today. Right? That colors our perception. For your junior developers, they're feeling that. They want to get in and contribute. Your senior developers, they've been there and done that. Give the people the opportunity to do the work that's suited to the level of their career at this point in time, and they will be much happier. So this is just kind of a quick screenshot I took at my previous job that I just left of our Jira board. I hate Jira. And this was kind of like work in progress for our organization. So this is not a contrived example. This was me dragging my cursor around and taking a screenshot. So of the work we were doing in this particular sprint, we've got a project where we need to show an error when people put invalid characters in their password. Is that hard work? Probably not. It could be complex for someone who's never been in that code. But if I take my senior-most front-end developer and say, show me an error message when that error condition happens, they're going to have to context switch. They're going to have to open up a branch. They're going to have to go in, fix that, test it. They're going to have to go through a code review process. I mean, it's going to take them off of valuable work for quite a while. Give it to a junior developer. This has been broken for a little while. It's not causing our application to be unavailable. It's something we would like to fix. If it takes them 3 days to do it, so what? Now they know a little bit more about our authentication system. Now they know a little bit more about our APIs. We've got a data hiding problem there in 1423. If I'm not logged in, don't show me some stuff that I'm seeing right now. That's pretty low-level work. Easily testable. Can you still see this stuff when you go to this page? Then it's not fixed. We've got some hard work here. We've got this, including the original artists on a popularity search. That's going down deep into the algorithms and where we're kind of amalgamating data. That's work that senior developers need to do. I bet if you look at your task board, whatever it happens to be, you will have a mix of work that is very complex and specialized and just the normal day-to-day stuff that keeps your app online. If you're not bringing in new developers and putting them on the new stuff, you're missing that opportunity. This is a little bit of a segue, but not really. Hiring junior developers is a really good way to make your engineering team more diverse. So I'm not sure if you knew this, but women and minorities have had a rough kind of half century or so in this industry. If you dispute my assertion, I invite you to look to your left or the right. If you are hiring senior developers, they're going to look like me, except probably with better hair and maybe better eyesight. Decades of systemic neglect by us as an industry have led to a workforce that is not representative of the world as a whole. At my last two jobs, I have been able to build engineering teams that were 50% something other than white males. And the fact that I feel in any way qualified to stand here before you and pat myself on the back like that's an accomplishment is a pretty damning indictment of our industry. But I probably have a better track record than most. So as I mentioned, if you're hiring senior developers, which a lot of companies, that's what they want to do, there's not a very diverse pool to pull from. It's just not. People with 10, 15 years of experience are going to fit a certain profile. And if you're only hiring from that, you're going to have a monoculture. However, down at the junior level, much more diversity. The programs that are getting women and minorities into technology are starting to kind of bear that fruit at the junior level. People coming out of code schools, very diverse. People starting to come out of computer science departments, more diverse. People getting into coding as a hobby and wanting to make it their full-time job, more diverse. So there's that balance down there at that level that does not exist at the top of the pyramid. So, if you're hiring and you have the opportunity to have a brand new, fresh out of kind of learning to code dude who looks like me, and you have it fresh out of school, just taking that first coding job, woman or minority, much easier to justify as a hiring manager and company taking the chance on the person who will make your engineering organization more diverse. Because everyone's at the same level. You can use tiebreakers. Tiebreaker goes to the one who brings more diversity in your organization. That's a good way of doing it without having to kind of chase the few unicorns who are out there at the senior level. Now, you also have to have a commitment to support them and grow them, but that's where the bulk of your diversity at the technology level is. It's down at the junior level. If you're hiring juniors, you're setting that path forward that in a few years will make your engineering team much more diverse. And if you happen to believe, as I do, going back to the kind of developers with previous slide, that diversity of thought, diversity of experience lets you build better product, you will gain a benefit from that. So that's an easy way to bring more diversity into your organization. So I feel like, successfully brought on several junior developers, folks who were coming into their very first coding job, and I found a few structures for success that I like to use. So one of them is a gradual ramp up. A lot of times you bring new developers in, you're like, here's our GitHub, here's our wiki, go start coding. Not a great way to do it. Give them a small view of the universe of your code, let them build some subject matter expertise, have achievable timelines that push them to get better, but are realistic about what they can accomplish. And then as they start accomplishing those things, gravitate towards bigger and bigger things. Have those discrete achievable tasks. Let them know when they've succeeded. Let them know when they're not there yet. So the tasks I had up on the board of when I log in with an invalid character, it shows me an error. Great task for a junior developer. You know when it works, you know when it doesn't. They can work on that, and they have a very clear case of what success looks like. Allow time for mistakes. They're going to screw up. You screw up too, and you kind of cover it with padded estimates, but they're going to mess up. So I wouldn't put them on mission-critical stuff early on. Put them on stuff where if they screw up and the code's not delivered on time, it's not the end of the world. But it's okay for them to make mistakes. I happen to know a junior sysadmin who blew away the password file for NASA writing a script one time because it was me. So that was a mistake that was fairly costly, but I look at that and I'm like, oh, I learned a lot from that, such as don't blow away the password file for NASA. Not directly applicable lesson in a lot of cases. Reward for initiative. If they want to step up and try something new, if there's an area of your code, if there's an area of your product that they're really interested in, that's great. Most of us are old and jaded and we don't care anymore. Like, they care. That's awesome. Harness that. If they want to, stretch their legs into a certain area, if it's at all appropriate for them, let them. The whole lack of give a shit is a big problem as you kind of work in a code base. So if they care about something, that's awesome. That's a good thing. Don't be like, no, we hired you over here. You can't look over in this area. Give them regular constructive feedback. Let them know that there's not a job penalty. You're not going to get fired for screwing up. You're not going to get fired for asking questions. Help them break down their code. Help them break down the work they're doing. Let them know, like, okay, here's why this wasn't a great choice. Here's a different way you could have done this and why it matters. And then find something positive in every commit they do. I saw you making this, you had this anti-pattern in effect for a while. You fixed that. That's an interesting approach to this problem. Explain it to me, the senior developer, why you thought that. Find cool things that they do and give them a little bit of praise. And don't expect them to be brilliant immediately. None of us were. Have reasonable expectations. You're not hiring this developer to take your company to the next level next week. You're hiring them to be a bedrock of your company next year. So here's a concept that I brought in at my previous company, TeamSnap, that if you're just like, I don't know how I would be able to get my company to bring more junior developers in, here's something that worked really well for me. So it's something we call the support engineer. How many people here have a company that has a customer support department, people whose job it is to talk to your customers? Awesome. The rest of you, wait till the investment money comes in. So the support engineer is a hybrid, half developer, half customer support, half goat. They are real developers. They have commit access. They work in your code, but they sit in your customer support group. In pretty much every company I've worked for, customer support is kind of a forgotten part of your company. They sit there and they absorb all the bad stuff that comes in, and when they come in and they give you a report about the bugs, you're like, yeah, we'll get to them, which doesn't make anyone happy. So with the support engineer, they sit in customer support. They're a coder. They are the bug sponge. They absorb all the bugs that come in, and they fix what they can, and they triage and escalate what they can't. First few weeks, they're not going to fix much. But then they're going to start fixing little things that come in. And the customer support doesn't necessarily have to wait months of a sprint cycle for this misspelling on the page to get fixed. And then they get better, and they start fixing more complex stuff. They sit on development meetings. They go through code review. They start to understand. But their job is to sit with customer support and make your customers happy. Support's going to love you as an engineering organization if you do this, because they never get any attention. You give them a developer, like this is your developer. Those calls you get every day, those emails you get every day, they're going to make it better. And then soon you'll find that this support engineer, they know everything. They go in the places in your code that no one goes. The dark, scary, sticky places where no one's been in years. Because that's where the bugs live. And they're in there every day fixing the bugs. They're fixing their own stuff. They go to the engineering meetings, and guess what? After what we found on average, about 9 to 12 months, they are so good as a developer, you have no choice but to promote them into the main engineering group. Now you've got yourself one of your most valuable developers because they understand. They've seen some stuff. They get it. Hire a new support engineer, have them train their replacement for a month or so. Boom. Instant, sustainable junior developer pipeline for your company. Just drop a developer in, developer comes out, new one comes in. It's a self-sustaining organization. And if you say, I can't find any other way to hire junior developers in my company, there's your way. Because you probably don't have this in your company, but you could very easily for an investment of $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. So here are my closing thoughts. You don't get senior developers without junior developers. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Senior developers do not spring forth fully grown from the head of Zeus. That was Athena, and that was mythology. So when people say, we don't hire junior developers, we don't hire seniors, I say, where do you think senior developers come from? They come from junior developers, and if no one gives them a chance, you're not going to get any more senior developers, which is kind of bad if your strategy is poach senior developers from other companies. Senior developers, really expensive and high demand. Junior developers, cheaper, craving that first job. They just want you to take a chance and give it to them. I don't know about you, but if I've got job openings sitting around for 9 months, really wish 9 months ago that I'd hired someone junior, they're probably now one of my better developers. But no, I had to hold out for that perfect person. It's a mercenary world out there. So growing developers inside your company, giving someone a chance to develop, will breed more loyalty. Loyalty is a thing that companies and employees used to have to each other. That's not a thing anymore. But they're going to remember who gave them that chance, as opposed to the senior developer that you threw a bunch of money at, poached from company X, who is very vulnerable to having more money thrown at them to be poached from you. That's just kind of how it works. Plus, you may be helping your future self as well when you're at your next job saying, man, I really wish I could hire some developers right now. My name is Wade Minter. You can find me on the interwebs, and I believe I've got a couple minutes for questions if anyone has any. Yes, sir.
Interview process. Thankfully, we have a junior developer, and due to the way the boot camp worked, we just had her come on immediately without having to interview her. But one of the problems that I had at our previous company is that we didn't necessarily know what kind of bar that we needed to set, because we knew interns were coming from the university. Boot camp, it was a giant question mark.
Sure. Yeah, I'd say in the interview process for junior developers, you're looking for more of, do they get your product and the problem you're trying to solve? Kind of set a bar for basic technical ability. I mean, you don't want someone who's lying about what they can do. But if they understand, depending on what your technology stack is, the basic ins and outs of how that works, and they really get your product, that's what you want to uncover in the interview. Because you can train them up on, if they went through a boot camp, they obviously know how to learn software. They can learn more of that. What you can't teach is an interest in solving the problems that you're trying to solve. So for me, that's kind of, I put a lot more emphasis on the kind of care about the company than the raw technology skills. Yes, sir. Yeah, yes, you.
What about checking if the junior developer has the ability to write good code? I mean, you can write code in Java, but can you write good code in Java? And you don't want the juniors to mess up with your code base, let's say. So how do you make sure that at least they know how to build good code? Because nobody teaches that at the university.
Sure. So the question is, how do you get junior developers who know how to write good code? I would argue that good code is an incredibly subjective term based on the company. Everyone has different values about what they consider good code. And yeah, you're right. A university can't teach you, well, this is how me and my particular clique of people or my company considers good code. So I would say the kind of counter argument to that is that's what your code review process should be for. If they understand the nuts and bolts of how to make method A talk to method B, but they're not writing the code in the style that you consider good, correct that in the code review process. And it may take them a few iterations to kind of start to get it, which is why you don't give them mission critical stuff on day one. Eventually, if they're good enough to learn coding, they will be good enough to learn your particular brand of coding in your community and need less hand-holding about your styles. So that I would say, do that in the code review process, coupled with not having unreasonable timelines for the work that they're doing. Back there.
Say even more than that, just make sure that you have an established style guide and coding standards that are displayable to anyone.
Yeah, that's part of your onboarding process. Have style guides and coding standards that people at all levels can absorb. Yes, sir.
So when you're going through the recruiting and you're looking at a bunch of different candidates, and you know we always have those filters of like needs college degree plus years of experience. One, how do you figure out what's their background? Is it worth your time to even sit down and interview them? And two, for the people that don't have boot camp experience, how are you saying, okay, they're going to make it through, they'll get to the phone screen?
Right.
And without being a waste of your time.
Yeah, I tend to rely fairly heavily on kind of a portfolio, like show me some work that you've done. That I don't put a lot of emphasis on kind of the academic degree or not necessarily even the work experience, that's just my own particular quirks. But if you've got something on your GitHub account that I can pass around to my developers or I can look at and kind of say, okay, I kind of get what they're doing here. I encourage the junior developers at the boot camps I go to make contributions to widely used open source projects because 99% of everyone's job is working in other people's code. So if you can show me that you've done that and you know how that process works, that's very impressive to me. So those are things that I weigh a little more highly, and I'm like, okay, this person's got an interesting project. I've seen some of their GitHub stuff. That's kind of interesting. That's kind of the main filter that I use. I'll be glad to, I'm here all week. I'll be glad to chat with folks more, but we have another session coming up here in 10 minutes. It's going to be really cool. I'm switching back into my track MC suit now. So we'll be learning about tiny, cheap computers and the power that they unlock. So my name is Wade Minter. Come check me out. But now, 10 minutes, we will get set up for our next talk. So thank you.